It adds capacity. It's always a rapid increase, because that's the nature of the industry. And all those folks who are doing that, they are market-savvy businessmen. They know what they're doing. They are projecting the demand for the future. When you keep all these things in perspective, ladies and gentlemen, and then the challenges that are here today, that we are facing, we have a rising import bill, a rising current account deficit, which we are trying to suppress with import substitution. We are trying to reverse the energy matrix that we have today. The dependency on imported fuels has to go down. It is essential for our national security. When we talk about the energy sector as it stands today, and as was mentioned by Nadeem Bhai, we've got substitute fuels and we've got competitive fuels going around. Let's just dwell upon renewable energy. Ladies and gentlemen, the pricing of renewable energy is dropping because of advancements in technology. We are talking about the set rate, the established rate in Pakistan is 4.5 cents per unit. We are talking about energy rates coming down to 2 cents per unit in the very near future, in the 3 to 4 year time horizon. We are talking about, I was in China, and we were talking about solar energy rates going down to 0.5 cents per unit. So when you have these competitive factors that you're dealing with, you have to put on your thinking hat and your research and development hat and see how you can be part of the change. And now comes the Kodak moment. How many of you have heard Kodak? Raise your hands, please. If you go forward and we're looking at a downward trajectory in the prices of energy, and we are telling our people that stop thinking with blinders around your eyes. Open your minds to the fact that in today's world, as you bring in more energy, we will be replacing the more expensive energy out of the pipeline. We'll be keeping it away. And it may be even cheaper just to make the capacity payments and bring in the renewable energy. Because once in our matrix of growth, the drivers of economic growth, energy is a major component. I don't have to tell this to this august audience. Once we bring that in, it just unleashes the sector. It gives tremendous impetus to our economy. That's where competition comes in. And our growth targets for the renewable energy sector, ladies and gentlemen, by the year 2025, what you saw, what Mr. Faizan projected, approximately 2 to 3% of renewable energy, we want to take it by 2025 to 20% of our energy mix. And by the year 2030, renewable energy, which does not include hydel, we are projecting it to reach 30% of our energy mix. Those are the changes that are taking place. The reason being because it was one of the largest film manufacturers in the world. What happened? It just disappeared. Why? Because it did not forecast the change in photography and digital photography that came about. They just didn't forecast it. It was business as usual. And they said, oh, this is a fad. Digital photography will go out of the window. Nobody can capture light as you can do with a film emulsion, an emulsion film. Guess what? They were wrong. The digitization of and technology changes that came about in the world of photography, it just revolutionized everything. And lo and behold, today on your smartphones, you can take photographs that are 24 megapixels. The same thing is happening in the energy sector, ladies and gentlemen. When Nadeem Babar Bhai and myself, we assumed office, one of our challenges in our sector was sitting down with the people and telling them that, listen, you have to keep on adding energy into the pipeline. There has to be incremental, cheaper form of energy that you have to keep on packing in. Why? Because we've got this latent demand. We've got this demand from a sector of the informal economy. And again, going back to that and putting things in perspective, a country like the United States, the European Union, which have very well-documented economies, but many people are not aware of the fact that for the European Union, about 18 to 20% of their economy is also in the informal sector. Why? The cash base, the mom and pop shops, the taxis. In the United States, it is also about 15%. So you can imagine the size of those economies, and 20% of the European Union economy, or 15% in the informal economy. So when you factor that into the equation, then, ladies and gentlemen, you have to provide for them. And the demand for the cheap energy is there. So, take the example of rare earth metals. The investments China is making in these very metals, in the material sciences, in magnetism, in various other rare earth metals, and the way these materials are combined, you're creating a class of metals that was never even thought of before, with the ability to drill deeper, with the ability for your computers transporting all these goods and services. Nadeem Bhai mentioned the harnessing of hydrogen. Let's go a step further. With quantum computing around the block, fission energy has already been harnessed militarily as well as for peaceful purposes. Hydrogen or fusion energy has been harnessed for military purposes with the hydrogen bomb. But fusion energy has not been harnessed for civilian purposes. Why? Because the plasma has to be contained. There's no metal to contain the plasma at 1.5 million degrees Celsius. That's hotter than the core of the sun, ladies and gentlemen. They're working on it. And it can only be contained with strong magnets. And where do those magnets come from? From the research and development in rare earth metals. That's where it's coming together. So now you see how all these components fit together and give an impetus to the energy sector. Now when we bring all this into the perspective of where technology is taking us, in the petroleum exploration sector, you're the experts here, ladies and gentlemen, but let me just add the component what Mr. Nadeem Babar also alluded to and mentioned in detail, artificial intelligence. And another component with that, when you factor that in, is quantum computing. The world of computing as we know it today, the binary, the 0 and 1, it's going to change. The decision-making abilities with quantum computing, with artificial intelligence, the energy exploration and production functions, whether you look at it upstream, midstream, downstream, energy production, it's just going to revolutionize the energy matrix. Distributed generation systems, what we are looking at today, some of our experts, they had this mindset that no, we should just, the renewable energy, the grid can't take it. Well, we are pushing them to make changes in the grid, to make use of the variable energy that is available on demand. And we told them that you have to realize that the Kodak moment should happen in the industry to the energy sector itself. Because the technologies are fast becoming available. Just to give you an example, in the military, the F-18, the F-16 aircraft, what we are manufacturing, the JF-17 aircraft, just to give you what the inherent nature of these aircraft and what technology does to them. If you were to fly these aircraft without onboard computers, ladies and gentlemen, the pilot will not be able to fly that aircraft because it is inherently unstable to fly without onboard flight computers. They are making corrections at the rate of 400 calculations per second to keep the aircraft maneuvering, to keep the aircraft flying. The same thing is happening elsewhere. So with these smart grids that are coming up, we'll have to look at net metering. When net metering energy comes into the system, how much and what at the microsecond demand level will have to be analyzed. Where is energy required? Where is it going? What is the active and reactive load? All these calculations, which are today being done with a 24-hour lag period, and that too at the very macro level, it will have to go down at the micro level. Another important factor, changes in the material science. what seems impossible today in the exploration of hydrocarbons is going to be very possible in the very near future.